Hi everyone, this is Sophie from Pass English GCSE. I had a student ask me about how they should analyse language, and that gave me the idea to demonstrate this via a quote explosion. So I've used Macbeth because a lot of students are studying the set text for the literature GCSE, and I thought this might be helpful. So the way I've laid out the quote is quite a long quote. Please don't panic. You wouldn't be expected to remember all this, but if you work through set quotes the way I'm about to show you, you're more likely to remember them, bits of them at least, and it will help you with the language analysis work as well. So, key information. I've used black pen just to write out the quote itself. Act 2, Scene 1, okay, just so you know where it is. You're not expected for the literature GCSE to memorise acts and scenes. However, I do advise you to be aware of key acts and scenes, just because this helps to give you an idea, a trajectory of where things are and what happens. Okay, so if you're given, an extract from the play, it's really useful for you to be able to know where it features, what's just happened, what's about to happen, that sort of thing. Okay, so for those maybe not studying or not familiar with Macbeth, this is the scene where he is killing Duncan. Okay, this is Macbeth killing Duncan, and obviously he is very distressed at this state, and this is right at the end of Act 2, Scene 1. So this is the final scene, just before the I go part. A bell has rung, sort of very ominous. Okay, and he goes and he kills the king. Okay, it's called regicide, and Macbeth is known as a usurper. So let's have a look just at the quote. Imagine you didn't even know that and you were just looking at the language itself. The way I annotate quotes for my quote explosion is I divide them into 3 parts. So I look for AO1, which stands for Assessment Objective 1. That's my basic understanding. So even if I don't know anything at all, say I've never read the play before in my life, I could at least, I know I've given you a bit of context about where this is and what's happened, but assume you didn't know that. AO1 understanding is just I can read and I get the gist of what's going on, and I might look at certain words and what they make me feel as a reader. Now remember, obviously I'm reading this quote to you right now, but it's from Macbeth, it's a play, so always write about the audience response. AO1 is understanding. I'd also look at AO2. Now I'll get a feeling about certain words, and the AO1 is the perception, the understanding, what I'm seeing. The AO2 is the kind of how I'm getting there, if you like. So imagine the AO1 is the what am I seeing, and the AO2 is the sort of how am I seeing that. AO2 is terminology or writer's craft. So it's knowing those writer's techniques, similes, metaphors, word classes, also knowing connotations of words. Okay, I'm going to draw a little line and just write connotations here, because it's so important. Now, what do I mean by connotations? I mean the associations that most people have with a word or phrase. These can include, but are not limited to, synonyms. Synonym means similar name or same name. So a synonym for good would be great, wonderful. But, connotations are much wider. Okay, so an example might be, just brief aside here on connotations. If I draw a love heart and I was looking for a synonym for love heart, another word for heart, well, I say love heart, I'd be thinking maybe of the organ. So I might sort of write, well, there's definitions and there's synonyms. So definition means define what is it. So it's an organ, it's a part in the body. Okay. A synonym might be pump, because that's what it does, or body part. Okay, they're kind of more literal, and there's a narrow band of words you can use for that. Connotations, however, much wider and quite different. Connotations of this, obviously, I don't want to teach you guys biology, but I hope you realise that, I'm sure you realise actually that real heart doesn't look like this. This is just the symbolism ascribed to it. But the connotations of a heart, so love, romance, Valentine's Day, flowers, chocolate. See, I'm thinking of all the romantic things that come with it. Okay, can you see how there's more words here than here or here? That's because synonyms are wide definition, not definition, but a wide class of words that you can use. It can include these, although these don't make sense because they're more literal depiction of a heart. Connotations can include synonyms, depends on your example, but connotations, I'll say this one more time because it is important. They are the associations that most people have with a word or phrase. So they are important for you to understand them. I would put them, now they're kind of linking to understanding here, but usually connotations comes under terminology because it comes under language analysis, which is what my student asked me about. Now, finally, it depends on your exam board here, guys, so be careful because different exam boards want different things. I know AQA for sure want their students to look at AO3 context. Context means the circumstances around when the play was written and how that impacts the audience. Less marks for this in AQA than for these two. Edexcel, be careful because it depends which question you're doing as to whether they want context or not. So just double check what the ARs are that you're required to demonstrate when you're writing about a particular set text. Okay, on to language analysis. So let's have a look at it for understanding. This is the first one you should do, so I'm going to do it in blue. I go and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. Thee, just so you're clear, is you. I go and it is done. The bell invites me, hear it not. Right, it all sounds very ominous, doesn't it? He can't even say killing or regicide. He's used it instead. It's too terrible to speak of, perhaps. That's why my eye sort of wandered along the line and I saw it and it stood out. If you cannot state the exact deed, or if you do not want to say exactly what something is, you want to use a gentler term for it, it's called a euphemism. A euphemism, a good example is, instead of saying he has died, people say he has passed away. That's a euphemism. I'm wondering if it is used as a euphemism here. I go and it is done. I'm going to come back to that full stop, okay? But there's a pause there for pause equals dramatic. I'll come into AO2 why or how that's done, I should say. I'll come to the punctuation would come under AO2, but you can see there's middle of the line. The bell invites me. How can a bell invite you? Bell isn't a person, so we've got personification going on here. I should really cover that in pink because that's this, but I had to point it out because it just reads on an understanding level as rather strange. Okay, so bell is ominous, and you've also got knell. Now, just in case you're not sure what knell is, okay, knell is a funeral bell rung to announce a death. So I think that's what. Interesting now, a funeral bell, the bell invites me. What, to go to the funeral or to die? I'm not sure what it is. Like, is it the funeral of Duncan or is it to die? Now, remember, Shakespeare's really good at leaving things. He's ambiguous. That means multiple possibilities. He writes for multiple possibilities, many methods. There's many possibilities for interpretation. He does that on purpose. He leaves things a little bit unclear, or I shouldn't say it's unclear. It's more that you could have these two. These two possibilities can be read from The Bell Invites Me, and Shakespeare does this to engage the audience, but also because he's a clever writer. And the better you are, the better you can use words, because he's a wordsmith, Shakespeare, the better you can use words to possibly attain multiple interpretations that are all apt, that are all accurate and apply to the situation in hand. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell. Right, instead of saying, hear it not, remember this is verse, okay? Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell. Instead of saying, don't listen, Duncan, or don't hear it, Duncan, hear it not, Duncan. That obviously wanted knell to be on the end of the line here because it rhymes with hell. Don't listen to it, that so it is a now because it is a funeral bell. That commands you, because that's another word. Commands, makes you. There's a sense of force here. Force commands you to heaven or to hell. Interesting. I say this is interesting because we're unsure if king worthy of heaven or hell. Surely he'd go to heaven, no, if he was a good king. Perhaps we're thinking that he's not. I don't know. I've put that unsure of king, whether he's worthy of heaven or of hell. Interesting that the speaker isn't sure if his king is worth much at all. Okay, could put here questions king's morality. Again, I'm reading into this quite a lot. Let's look at the AO2 because it will explain some of the things that I've seen. A euphemism would technically be terminology, as would personification. I go and it is done. So, well, I should make this really clear. Sorry guys, I didn't. All right, murder. All right, is complete. He's killed the king. Murder is complete. AO1, because that's something that's happened. Now I said about this pause, it's called a caesura in poetry. Caesura means a dramatic pause on the line, whereas if the line runs on to the next, like this one, that'd be enjambment. For it is a now, this is enjambment. And you see how it just runs on. Now that pause there is really awkward, creates instability. It's for this reason. So let's count the syllables. I go and it, I'm going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Invites. I go and it is done. The bell invites me. Oh, you've got an extra syllable here, look. Usually for iambic pentameter it's 10, but there's an extra syllable on the line. Iambic means the didum rhythm, and I'm not saying that this is the case here, I'm just saying usually it's an iambic pentameter. Pentameter means the 10 syllables, it's not. I go and it is done, the bell invites me. That isn't iambic there. I go and it is done, the bell invites. Maybe. Iambic, just in case you're wondering what I'm doing here, it's the didum. I go and it is done, the bell invites me. Still got this extra syllable. Ooh, it makes it uncomfortable and awkward. It sits on the end of the line. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a... Now, yeah, you got your 10 there, see? That summons thee to heaven or to hell. Yeah, they're 10. But me is that extra syllable. I see there's a lot of pink on this work. Okay, but that is valid to note that. Similar technique happens in Hamlet as well, with the extra syllable on the line. It sort of lingers there uncomfortably. It stands out, me. So Shakespeare is having Macbeth draw our attention, the audience, to me. It sits on the end of the line. So this self-referential, I'm going to write that, self-referential extra syllable. So these are just fancy labels for the obvious. It's usually an iambic pentameter. So pentagon has 5 sides. So 5 feet. A foot has 2 syllables. Okay, so this is a foot. 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 And this is not. This is not a complete foot. This 11th syllable. So the pentameter is disrupted. The iambic, the didum rhythm, feels a bit sponde there, but that could be an academic moot point. As long as you're writing something along these lines in your exam, as long as you're noticing these sort of things in the language, you'll be doing quite well. Hear it not, Duncan. Is he commanding him there? Because you've got summons and you've got hear it not, don't hear, and summons. Said about them both commanding, we know that a command is known as imperative verb. You can say command as well, but those two, the hear it not and summons, Okay, more terminology there. Oh, and obviously, Nell and Hell. I said these rhyme, didn't I? And these are the two final lines of the scene before it says exit. So that is known as a rhyming couplet. Because there's two lines and they rhyme. They're not always at the end of the scene. They can be elsewhere, but they usually draw the audience's attention to the finality of it all. And look at the words that rhyme. A funeral bell and hell. Yes, that's no mistake. We're drawn to those words. So you'll find that as you read through various quotes, you'll be drawn to certain words because they'll have an emotional connection. So you'll look for the AO1 understanding first. Then you'll go and see, well, how is that happening? Well, the terminology is how that's happening. I haven't really touched on context. There's so much that you can have with Macbeth, but I think the fact that this is probably the climax of the play in that he has just committed regicide. It's the killing of the king. There's lots you can write about that. Structure point, climax, arguably. Maybe that being pink, the structure point. Oh, and of course, religious point you can make as well about grave reference. Grave, I mean there as in serious. So you've got religion and you've got power coming out of these two for, I know their theme, well, power is a theme, religion, depends how you view it. It's either a theme or a motif. A motif is a recurring idea that keeps coming up. Okay, but you've got context points you can write there about religion and power. Remember I said that Macbeth is what we call a usurper. That means he takes power by force. Your teachers may have taught you that word before. And regicide is the it's not just a crime, it's a mortal sin as well. And that's something you could put for it's awful. That's something else you could write for context. You don't need a lot. At the end of your pica, however, petal, whatever paragraph structure you use for writing about a key quote in literature, you could put your context point right at the end of that paragraph. As long as you're staying on topic, whatever you've been asked about, whether it be Macbeth, whether it be about abuse of power, regicide, the king. It's interesting, this reference, whether was Duncan an effective king? Probably not, because there's reference earlier in the play of where he trusted someone, something along the lines, he says, I placed in him an absolute trust, and the previous Thane of Cawdor has been executed for betrayal. So this idea that Duncan trusts traitors, so it questions his ability to effectively govern as king. There's lots there, okay? But I would always say, don't just end up writing about the AO1 understanding, the blue. Can you see how much pink is on this page? Most students I encounter miss out AO2. They miss out the how does the writer do it? How do they get there? Well, they get there with using, disrupting the iambic pentameter, euphemisms, caesura, personification, imperative verbs, enjambment. They get there through having rhyming couplets. All of these combined techniques in any given quote will render it powerful, but enable you to build an understanding of exactly what is going on. Final thing that I would say to you all, when you get something that looks like this, you've had a go at doing a quote explosion, as I like to call them, stick it up on your wall. Or if it was me, I'd stick it up on my fridge, because I'm guaranteed to go into my fridge looking for something and have a look at it. You'll probably be sick of it after a few weeks, but chances are you'll remember some of it. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell, and then you'll remember heaven or to hell. So you'll have remembered some of it. You do not need to know everything with literature, but you do need to know some key quotes, and I feel this is one of them, and it covers a couple of characters and themes. So it's a very worthy quote to know and to explore. If you're a language candidate, just look at the way that I've analysed the language in this one, the AO1, the AO2. If you're reading something fresh, it wouldn't be Shakespeare, but it could be an old text. And you wouldn't be expected to sit there writing these quote explosions out. But I hope the process of doing it, showing you, has helped you to see what's going on. Well, the what is the blue, and the how is the writer doing it, that's the pink. And between those two things, you can develop a decent understanding of language. So I hope this is helpful. I'll post this up. Feel free to put any comments below and I'll have a read of them. Thanks guys, bye.